What happens when a black teenager is kicked off a pier just for sketching a sunset? Days later, he returns with a billionaire, and what follows leaves the entire harbor speechless. If you'd seen Devin Brooks that evening, odds are you wouldn't have looked twice. 17, slim build, wearing a faded tee, jeans scuffed at the knees, and a backpack that had seen better days. The kind of kid folks glance past like he's part of the scenery. But here's the catch. It's kids like Devin who end up as the footnote in someone else's cautionary tale. Not because they did something wrong, but because the world decided long ago that boys like him don't belong in places like this. He wasn't chasing attention. No cameras, no hashtags. Devin came to Marina Bay Pier for one thing, to catch the light before it dipped below the skyline. That perfect golden hour glow. His little sister, Camila, had asked him to draw a sunset for her school project. Something beautiful and peaceful, she'd said. Devin didn't complain. He knew how rough it had been on her after their mother's illness, and how much it meant to Camila to hang one of his drawings on her classroom wall like a trophy. The sky was already starting to soften into oranges and dusty reds. Devin spotted a bench right near the water, where the yachts floated like porcelain swans in a pageant of privilege. He unzipped his backpack, mixed some ochre with magenta, exhaled slowly, and began to sketch. And it would have been the perfect scene, just a boy and his art, if it hadn't been for the two men in black security uniforms who materialized like they were summoned by the scent of optimism. "Hey," barked the bald one, square jaw, sunglasses indoors type, the kind of man who complains to the manager when his steak's 2 degrees off, medium rare. "What are you doing here?" Devin looked up and smiled politely. The kind of smile black boys are taught to master early. The one that says, "I'm not a threat." "Just drawing," he said. "The sunset. It's for my sister's school project." The second one, taller with a smirk that should have come with a health warning, stepped in before Devin could finish. "This here is private property, kid, not a coloring book." Devin tried to stay calm, but then it came, that phrase. "This ain't a place for people like you." People like him? Oh, we know what that means. That's the universal dog whistle. Polite enough to deny, sharp enough to cut. Devin had heard it before. In the mall when security only followed him. At school when teachers said his writing was too good to be his. On the bus when a woman clutched her purse as he sat down. But those were pinpricks. This question mark. This was a punch with brass knuckles. "I wasn't bothering anyone," Devin said, holding up his sketchbook like it was evidence in a trial he didn't sign up for. "What are you drawing? One of these boats?" The tall one sneered. "You planning to post it online? Call your buddies down here for a protest or some nonsense?" Before Devin could answer, the bald one reached over and yanked his earbuds out. The other grabbed his backpack and flipped it, scattering brushes and pencils across the boardwalk like confetti. Only there was no celebration, just humiliation. A crowd started to gather, families with ice cream cones, tourists with sunglasses, none of them saying a word. "Get moving before we call the cops," the bald one said, like he was doing Devin a favor. Devin didn't cry. Not his style. He picked up his supplies one by one, hands shaking, back straight. He walked away with his dignity intact, at least what was left of it. But inside, it burned, not from shame, from anger, from that raw, quiet fury that builds when the world reminds you you're only welcome until you make them uncomfortable. He reached the bus stop and sat down hard. His fingers trembled. He looked down at one of his sketches, the one that had almost been finished, and saw it now had a big black boot print across the center. A boot on a sunset. How poetic. And that's when Devin saw him. Across the water, on the deck of a sleek white yacht, stood an older white man in a linen shirt, holding a glass of wine like he had all the time in the world. He'd seen the whole thing, watched it go down from a distance like it was dinner theater. Didn't say a word, just stared. Their eyes met, brief, electric, and then Devin looked away. He didn't wait for a conversation, didn't need one. He turned and walked. Home was the same as always. His mom, bone-tired after a double shift. Camila, asleep with a book on her chest. Devin sat by the window, sketch pad on his lap, but his pencil wouldn't move. Not because he didn't know what to draw, but because there was too much to feel, and none of it fit inside the lines. The next day at school, he tried to shake it off. math history, same faces, same small talk. But during art class, Miss Brady, silver hair, paint on her hands, and a face like she'd seen more than she let on, noticed something in his eyes. "Everything all right, Devin?" she asked. He wanted to nod, say, "I'm fine." But instead, he told her. The whole thing. She didn't gasp, didn't interrupt. She just listened, then said softly, "Still happening, huh? Even here, even now." And she wasn't shocked, just tired. The kind of tired black folks carry like a coat they can't take off. That afternoon, as Devin stepped off campus, he saw something that made him stop dead in his tracks. A sleek black Tesla idling by the curb. Chauffeur in front, in the back seat, that same man from the yacht. The man stepped out. He wasn't in linen this time. Now it was a tailored navy jacket, leather shoes, and a calm, almost surgical expression. "Devin Brooks?" he asked. Devin froze, shoulders tight. "Yes," he said carefully. "I saw you the other evening," the man said. "I saw what they did, and I saw how you stood your ground. You didn't flinch. That impressed me." Devin didn't say a word. He just stared. "I'd like to show you something," the man continued, "if you're willing." Now, Devin had seen enough movies to know that when a wealthy white man in a three-piece suit offers you a ride, you ask questions. But something about this one, his tone, his poise, made Devin pause. "What's your name?" he asked. "Kelvin Hargraves," the man said. "I own several properties, including, as of this morning, Marina Bay." Devin blinked. "You bought the port?" Kelvin smiled faintly. "Sometimes when the system won't listen, you don't protest it, you purchase it." Devin glanced back at the school, then at the man, then at the open door of the car. He took a breath and stepped inside. What happened next? Oh, trust me, you're not ready. Because Devin didn't just return, he came back with power. And next time he stepped on that pier, the rules had already changed. When you're a black boy holding a sketchbook, the world shoves you off the dock. But when you roll back up in a Maybach next to a billionaire, the air shifts. Folks remember how to breathe differently. Eyes dart, voices crack. And suddenly the same security guards who tossed you out like yesterday's paper can't seem to find their usual arrogance. Funny how fast manners resurface when money and power walk through the door. Devin Brooks sat in the leather seat of the car, watching the marina pass by through tinted glass. He was still wearing that same old t-shirt, still in those jeans with the worn-out knees. But everything felt different. The air carried weight now. And it wasn't about his clothes or the car. It was about presence, about returning not just as a person, but as a statement. Whether he liked it or not, Devin had become a symbol. Next to him, Calvin Hargraves leaned back in his seat, calm as ever. The billionaire didn't smile, didn't chat, just watched. There was a kind of stillness in the way he carried himself, like a chess master who'd already lined up the board and was waiting to move the last piece. Power doesn't always talk. Sometimes it just watches and lets the silence work. "You know why I brought you back here, Devin?" Calvin asked, just as the car began to slow near the marina's main gates. Devin turned his head slightly. "Not exactly, sir." Calvin nodded slowly. "Because I saw how you carried yourself that day. No yelling, no scene. You walked away with your head high. That matters, especially in a world that's been trained to break people like you before you ever have the chance to stand." The Maybach came to a full stop at the entrance. Behind the tinted glass, Devin could make out a familiar figure, the bald security guard from 3 days ago, the same man who'd yanked his earbuds and kicked his brushes into the water like they were trash. Now he stood at attention, radio in hand, face fixed in that same tight-lipped expression of forced authority. "Pass, please," the guard muttered, not bothering to look inside the car. The window hummed as it lowered, and the moment the guard saw who was inside, he froze, like someone had hit pause on his entire body. "Mr. Hargraves, I didn't realize, you didn't recognize the boy you kicked out a few days ago?" Calvin's voice was calm, but each word hit like a brick. The guard blinked, throat bobbing. "No, sir. He was just black?" Calvin cut him off, tilting his head. "That's what you want to say, right? Save your breath. I'm old, but my hearing still works just fine. Open the gate." The guard stepped back, wordless. The car glided forward, leaving him standing like a statue. Only this one wasn't made of stone, but of consequences. 20 minutes later, a mandatory all-staff meeting was announced across the marina. No one knew what it was about, but when Calvin Hargraves walks into a building with a folder under his arm, people start to sweat. You could feel it in the air, like a summer storm about to break. They gathered in the conference room, a boxy glass space with a humming air conditioner that usually barely worked. Today it was blasting like it too, knew this was no ordinary meeting. White collars, blue vests, captains, clerks, all crowded in, casting quick glances at each other. Whispers rippled through the room. Then Calvin entered, followed by Devon. Heads turned, faces changed, eyes narrowed, mouths went dry. A few workers leaned into each other. "That's the kid. Is that really him? No way." Calvin didn't waste a moment. He walked to the podium, placed the folder down, and looked around the room like he'd been running the place for years, not hours. "As of yesterday, my firm officially acquired ownership of Marina Bay Port," he said, voice steady and direct. "This is no longer a privately managed property by absentee landlords. This is now my home, and like any home, it will follow my rules." Murmurs swept the crowd. Someone near the back clapped once or twice, but stopped quickly when Calvin raised a single hand. "3 days ago," he continued, "this young man, Devon Brooks, came here to draw, not to loiter, not to steal, not to cause trouble. He came to sit quietly and sketch the sunset for his sister's school project." Calvin turned toward Devon for a brief moment, then back to the crowd. "He wasn't climbing on boats. He wasn't vandalizing anything. He wasn't even talking to anyone. But your security, 2 grown men, saw him and decided he didn't belong. So they dragged him out like he was some kind of threat." Devon stood still, quiet, but the room could feel the weight of the moment radiating from him like heat. Bald-headed Garrett, the guard from before, raised a hand half-heartedly. "We thought—" "You didn't think, Garrett," Calvin snapped. "You acted, with confidence, with bias, and with cruelty. That's not just poor judgment, that's a pattern. So let me make myself clear. You're fired. You and your partner with the smug grin and the off-color jokes." A cold silence fell over the room. Garrett didn't argue, just stood there, red-faced, as if he was only now realizing he wasn't the main character in this story. Not even close. "And don't come crying to me about feeding your family," Calvin added. "Devon has a family too, and he wasn't the one using a badge to push people around." After the meeting, as staff trickled out, a tall black dock worker approached Devon. Broad shoulders, rough hands, and eyes that looked like they'd seen too much. "You did good, son," he said, clapping Devon on the back. "You stood up. For all of us." Devon nodded, but he didn't feel triumphant. He felt heavy, because standing up with a billionaire behind you is one thing. But when that billionaire isn't there, the system doesn't magically change. The next grocery store clerk might still follow him. The next classroom might still assume he's cheating when he aces a test. Later that afternoon on Calvin's yacht, a sleek, quiet beast of a boat named the Equalizer, the two of them sat on the deck under a wide sky. The sun was starting to set again, casting gold across the water. Calvin poured himself a glass of something strong, then looked over at Devon. "You know what your real strength is?" he asked. Devon shook his head. "I'm not sure I have any." "Oh, you do," Calvin replied. "You didn't let them crush you. You walked away when most folks would have crumbled. That's rare. That's power." "I didn't ask to be a symbol," Devon said. "I just want to draw." Calvin nodded, sipping his drink. "I didn't ask to be rich. I just didn't want my mother working 3 jobs and still going hungry. Life doesn't ask. It throws you in the deep end, and you either swim or you drown with your pride still intact." That night, the local news ran a short segment. Investor Calvin Hargraves acquires New Jersey Marina amid racial discrimination scandal involving teen artist. The clip of the staff meeting went viral. Social media lit up. Some called it justice. Others asked why it took a billionaire's voice to make the world care. But people were talking, and that was something. Meanwhile, Devon sat alone in his room, paints in his lap. He stared at the sketch from that first day, the one with the boot print. He didn't throw it away. Instead, he traced the outline of the boot with black ink, reshaped it into a storm cloud, then added a deep red glow beneath it. That was his sunset. That was his pain, his fire, transformed into something the world had no choice but to look at. This is it, the turning point, the confrontation, the line in the sand. What happens next will shift everything. Don't miss how Devin finally claims his voice and rewrites the rules. The days that followed moved like a landslide, fast, messy, and unstoppable. Devin could barely catch his breath. Headlines carried his name like it was a weather alert. Teen artist sparks business reform, read one. The boy who redefined a dock, said another. Invitations poured in from TV networks, galleries, nonprofits, podcasts. One viral blogger even offered to mint an NFT of the sketch with the boot print, called it Footnote to Freedom. But Devin wasn't chasing any of that. Every time he looked in the mirror, he saw someone he barely recognized. Not because of the jacket Calvin had given him, not even because of the places he now found himself welcomed into, places that used to clutch their pearls when he walked past. No, it was something deeper. That boy who used to draw sunsets for his little sister now had eyes that saw something else. Responsibility. I don't have to do the interviews, Calvin told him one afternoon as another network requested his time. I know, Devin replied, but I feel like I do. Not for me. For the kids who got pushed off playgrounds, banned from classrooms, told they didn't belong, all because they were the wrong kind of different. Calvin just nodded. He understood. Silence in a world full of noise could be the most expensive thing to afford. One morning they returned to the marina to inspect the new security team. Now standing tall at the front gate was a former Marine, a black man with eyes like steel and the kind of calm that made you think twice before stepping wrong. The old guards? Fired. But Garrett and his partner hadn't gone quietly. They filed a wrongful termination claim, claiming unfair treatment. Calvin read the lawsuit once and let out a single dry chuckle. Isn't that something, he said. When they kicked out a teenage boy for holding a pencil, that was just doing their job. But now that they're out, it's injustice. That's white fragility for you. Tough when swinging, fragile when hit back. They lost the case. The judge didn't even call for witnesses. The footage said it all. But the real storm was still waiting. No one planned it. Real turning points don't get invitations. They arrive like thunder, sudden, loud, unavoidable. It was a Friday. The marina was buzzing with energy. The launch of Art on the Water, a bold initiative Devin and Calvin co-created, had brought crowds from all over. Wealthy donors, reporters, art critics, young students. The goal was simple. Give underrepresented artists a platform, right there on the pier, with the ocean as their backdrop. Devin stood near the front, paintbrush in hand. His canvas stretched high behind him, a living piece of art in progress. He wore his same jeans and a paint-streaked hoodie, but this time people weren't looking past him. They were looking at him. A plaque beside his platform read, "Curated by Devin Brooks." Toward evening, a man approached the exhibit, sharp in a designer suit, walking with the kind of entitlement that filled every gap before he even opened his mouth. Devin recognized him, vaguely. That familiar face belonged to Mr. Pierce, a member of the city council and owner of the shipping firm that ran the neighboring dock. "Good evening," Pierce said, his tone smooth like a polished shoe. "Lovely work. Very vibrant." Devin gave a nod, no smile. "I imagine it's well-intentioned," Pierce continued. "But you understand, of course, this is a business zone. There are concerns from investors. Things like this can make the place feel, well, unfocused." His voice oozed with the kind of politeness that carried daggers under its breath. Calvin, who'd been speaking with a journalist nearby, walked over just as Pierce's tone turned syrupy. "Concerns, huh?" Calvin said coolly. "Funny, I talked to a few of our colleagues too, and they're not concerned about the art. They're concerned about change, about whose names are on the door now, about who gets invited to the table." Pierce offered a tight chuckle. "Let's not get dramatic. This isn't about race, Mr. Hargraves. It's about reputation." "Reputation or control," Calvin shot back. "Because when you had control, kids like Devin here weren't welcome. Now that they're curating exhibits, suddenly it's a problem?" The crowd quieted. Cameras turned. Someone whispered, "We're live." We support diversity, Pierce began again, trying to find a safe patch of ground. No, Devon interrupted, his voice calm and sharp. You tolerate diversity when it doesn't inconvenience you. You're not worried about this event hurting business. You're worried that business no longer looks like you. Pierce stiffened, eyes wide, mouth ajar like a fish out of water. Devon stepped forward. When I came here before, all I wanted was to sketch the sunset. That was it. I wasn't hurting anybody, but I got thrown out like I didn't belong. And I'll never forget that feeling. That tight, hollow ache of being told, without words, you're not meant to be here. He paused. But now I am here. Not for revenge, not to flex. I'm here so no kid ever feels like that again. Whether they come with a paintbrush or a toolbox, they deserve respect. They deserve space. The applause was thunderous. Pierce quietly faded into the background. Forgotten, replaced by a new narrative. A week later, Marina Bay officially joined a federal inclusion initiative, becoming a model for equitable business redevelopment. Devon received offers from 3 universities, each with a full scholarship. One even offered to name an art wing after him. His painting, the one with the boot print, was displayed at the Museum of Modern Art under a new title. I was here. But the most powerful moment happened in silence, with no cameras. That night back on the yacht, Calvin poured tea instead of bourbon. They sat on deck under the stars, the harbor lights shimmering like tiny dreams. You know what comes next, don't you? Calvin asked. Devon looked at him. I have to deal with people who don't just hate me. I'll have to deal with the ones who try to use me. Calvin nodded. Exactly. They'll call you to panels, ask you to speak, put your face on banners. But remember this, none of that is the real you. The real you is the kid who kept drawing even after the world tried to stomp the art out of him. I get it, Devon said. Before, I was just drawing for my sister. Now I'm drawing for all the kids nobody ever saw. Then you've already won, Calvin said, raising his cup. They clinked glasses. No toast needed. Some victories don't shout. They just breathe. Calm, certain, lasting. This wasn't a fairy tale. There was no crown, no magic wand. Just a boy who refused to bow, a man who understood the cost of silence, and a community that chose to open its eyes. Devon Brooks didn't become a symbol because he wanted to. He became one because the world needed a reminder that every time you walk past and stay silent, you're siding with the ones doing the pushing, but every time you stand beside someone, even if your voice shakes, you've already changed the world a little.